Hello and welcome to the Breakaway Entrepreneur podcast, where we explore the entrepreneur mindset and the characteristics and traits that lead to success. I'm your host, Janet Fish. In this episode, I sit down with Jan Janzen to talk about how 6 figures is the new minimum wage. Jan has been an entrepreneur for over 40 years. She's traveled the world for 9 years, living out of 2 suitcases, primarily in undeveloped countries. She's taken that experience and today helps women entrepreneurs create 6-figure businesses. I hope you enjoy our chat. All right, Jan, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing fabulously well, Janet. Thank you.
I always have to check the clock because I'm like, what, is it noon yet? And is it afternoon?
Where am I? Who am I talking to?
Well, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to have you on this afternoon. Let's just jump right in and get started. Tell me a little bit about yourself and you and your business.
Well, I live in Canada. I live in British Columbia on 20 acres. And I had semi-retired back in 2011, Janet. I've been an entrepreneur since I was, 19. I bought my first franchise, so it's been 40 years. And I decided to semi-retire in 2011. And for those 9 years, it was really great. I mean, I got to travel the world, and then my husband and I bought property out here in Canada, and just really took some time to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so and it was a hard decision. You know, I've been a serial entrepreneur for so many decades that it was hard to kind of decide, well, you know, what am I going to do now? And so I decided after much thought and much contemplation that I really wanted to help women with money. And I felt that where I could help them the most was by helping them to sell. And so Sales Queens International was conceived actually 20 years ago, I realized, but it was born in someone's living room in LA at a workshop in November of last year.
So it sounds like you focus on women.
I do focus on women.
And it sounds like it's really to help empower women in the sales process, which I absolutely love because that's how I got started coaching way back in the day. I had a woman who was trying to recruit me into Mary Kay, and I wasn't really interested in selling Mary Kay, but I loved her and I helped. So I started working with her people in the sales process, and that's actually how I started coaching way back 15 years ago. So I love that. So talk a little bit more about why just women, and talk a little bit more about the unique, challenges or things that you've experienced with women in that sales process or that mindset around sales?
Well, I've always worked with women. And being a woman, I know how they think. I know how I think. I'm not so sure I'm quite that much of an expert when it comes to men. So that was one reason. And the other reason is I've just always felt that women would be the ones to change the world. And I firmly believe that women who have money will have an easier time of making the difference in the world that I think if I thought we so desperately needed, before 2020, when I was coming up with all of this, I certainly would say that we need change in the world right now. So I think women are great change makers, but oftentimes because of the financial position that they're in for various reasons, it can be really challenging for them to have the time or the energy or the money to step out and make the difference they want to make. So that's why I decided to empower them. And it's been, it's always a journey. It's always a process, but it feels good. It feels really good.
So talk about the process that you take them through. Talk about how you make selling easier for them.
Well, I think for a lot of women, sales just feels yucky. I mean, when I did a survey, there was 4 words that came out loud and clear, and that was slimy, icky, yucky, and sleazy. Now those are words that I think most of us would want to associate with something that's going to make us money, and yet that's how women felt about it. It feels really unnatural. And there's several reasons for that, which I identified. And one of them is that for the most part, we use a lot of male terminology when we talk about selling. We talk about a target market. We talk about closing. We talk about a tripwire. We talk about a hook. We talk about, so many things filling the pipeline. And so I feel like I'm going out more on a hunting expedition than I am going to help solve a problem for the person that I really care about. And I think for a lot of women that feels really unnatural. So that's part of it. The other thing is that according to Gong, who they are the ones that actually analyze sales conversations and are very, very good at it. They actually say that women sell 11% more than men, which shocks a lot of people because we apparently do everything wrong. We interrupt, we talk too much, we don't leave enough time for this or that. But the thing is that we are great listeners, and we are empathetic listeners. I call it wholehearted listening. And so there's some really good things, but I think you have to work with women to help them see where they are so good in order for them to feel comfortable and relaxed in it, and show them also how to do it in a way that is just intrinsic to our nature.
Yeah, I have experienced a lot of that. I don't specifically coach women. I've coached men and women. However, I have seen that same reaction of them to the sales process. So I like that you did the survey and you've identified icky and yucky and sleazy, and I forgot what the other one was. Slimy. So how do you reframe that? So how do you this is my thought process. I don't like sales per se. You talked a little bit about solving the problem, which is where I would attack it from. But how do you change their mindset around that?
Well, first of all, we change the languaging. So I don't talk about, a target market, for example. I talk about a focus market because it just sounds so much softer. And when we don't talk about a prospect, we talk about a potential partner. So right away, it starts to change your mindset and realizing what is the purpose of a sales conversation. And it is to help that person solve a problem. So we do that all the time. I mean, my goodness, if we didn't solve problems, our households wouldn't run, children wouldn't get to school, nothing would happen if women didn't solve problems. So they do it naturally. And when they start to really relax into the fact that they do it naturally, it just makes it so much easier because they're already good at it. They just have to they just have to really relax into that knowingness and start to focus not on themselves and all the stuff that's going on in their head, but just really try to put themselves into that potential partner's shoes and feel good about what they're doing.
Yeah, I try to, when I've got someone who's the resistant to sales conversation, I kind of attack it from a little bit of a different perspective, although similar. I attack it from what's the problem that you solve, of course, but then I kind of work it into, do people really need what you have? And the answer better be yes, or you shouldn't be in the business in the first place. And then I turn it around to, it's your responsibility to use your gifts to help others. And I have found that that's just such a natural thought process for most women, right? So I kind of shame them into it sometimes, but you got to do what you got to do to get them to at least open up to the process, or to the thought that selling is serving. Selling isn't, going and grabbing somebody's credit card and swiping it.
And I think we've just all had some really negative experiences in the sales arena. I mean, I had 3 businesses in the automotive industry, which is probably where the used car salesman, obviously comes from, and where no woman wants to be. But we're so not that for the most part. I mean, every once in a while you meet someone like that, but it's rare.
Yeah.
So, but I think that has a stigma that women feel they want to be sure that they're nowhere near like that. And so they completely go in the opposite direction. But I agree with you, Janet. It's a huge responsibility that we have to help other people. And so when we do it and we do it well, we are in huge service. And that's how I see it.
Yeah, and
we are in huge service.
Yeah, I mean, it's reframing the thought from sales being about getting the exchange of money to sales being about serving somebody.
Absolutely. We're just helping. That's all we're doing. We're helping.
Exactly. So I want to take it back a little bit because I want to delve a little deeper into you. You said you were semi-retired since 2011. What made you come back?
For those 9 years, Janet, that I traveled the world, I spent most of my time in underdeveloped countries. So, for example, I lived for 4 months in rural El Salvador. I spent 7 months in Guatemala. I lived in 5 cities in Mexico. I traveled all over the Philippines and Asia. So it wasn't like I was spending time mostly in developed countries. It was mostly underdeveloped countries. And when you see the struggle of so many women and the impact that it has, not just on them, but also on their children and on the animals, it was heartbreaking. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I just cried because it was so hard to see, the animals suffering, the children suffering, the kids not going to school. If they did, they often didn't have proper school supplies or even proper shoes to wear. It was challenging. And I've just got, I've got a real soft heart like most women do. And when I came back and I realized that I had the opportunity to help make a difference for this, because I think so many women in developed countries want to make a difference, but the problem is that they're limited in how much they can do because of finances. And so I thought, well, if I could empower them to earn more money, it's natural. I mean, I just think we naturally want to help out. And I just did a webinar presentation last week, and I showed some of the pictures, and I talked about this. And the response was overwhelming. I mean, I was nervous about it because I'd never done a webinar like this before. It'd always been very much either business or very spiritual, but I'd never done that kind of philanthropy and the fact that we have a responsibility to earn money because we were born into this situation where we have so much opportunity. And so I think it's our responsibility. And it went over really well. And I was really thrilled. And so now the women are excited about growing their businesses because they really want to not only create what the life they want, but they also want to be able to help others.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that whole concept. So you've been all over the world, in a lot of underdeveloped countries. You've obviously seen women entrepreneurs all over the world, and I'm curious about it. I don't know how much of the women that you worked with during those 11 years as you were traveling the world, I don't know how many of those were entrepreneurs, maybe none of them, but I'm curious as to your thoughts on, one, how the entrepreneurial mindset is different, how entrepreneurs think differently than people who have jobs, and if that's true throughout the world.
I think there's a lot more entrepreneurial endeavors that goes on in a developing country because it's just a way of life there. Whether you're just gathering the wood for so you can cook dinner that night or whatever, there's so much, or you're selling a scarf so you can put an egg on the table for your kids. I mean, it just is the way of life. And so I think that whereas in North America, we tend to have more of a luxury of having jobs and massive corporations that you can apply for and you can go get a job. For the person who lives in rural El Salvador, that isn't really an option. The men go out to fish, the men are farmers, the men grow coffee, the men do something, the women do something. We help support still a family in El Salvador, and a couple of years ago their fridge broke. Well, Sonia, the mother, she made ice in that fridge, that freezer part of the fridge, which she sold to people who didn't have a fridge in her community. And that money helped to pay for the school supplies for her kids. Mm-hmm. So who would think doing something as simple as that? But that's on being an entrepreneur. So when it broke and we realized the situation we're in, we paid for a new fridge because that was important to us. And it's so many small things like that. This isn't about having a great, big, huge business. This could be doing something as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm assuming as successful entrepreneurs in the United States or in North America, because you're my Canadian good friend today, it's about getting up every day and going and doing whatever you need to do to put money on the food on the table, money on the table. For us, most of us aren't working to put food on the table or pay our mortgages. We're a little bit more. Privileged than that, but I think it's that mindset of, okay, I'll go make ice if that's what I have to do to put school supplies in my kids' hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think, one of the things that was so heartbreaking is just day after day. Someone would be selling something because that was going to put food on their table that day. I mean, when the Bible says, give me the day, for today, my daily bread, I mean, they're really talking about their daily bread. We kind of use that as as a metaphor for, just food, which may be everything from beef and, and chicken and meat and good quality vegetables. They're possibly very well talking about bread, and it is for that day. So you don't go back and ask for a refund because, the thing you bought broke the next day, because that money has been gone. That money has been spent. It's a totally different world. And so that is the reality. And, when I remember being in Guatemala and a woman approaching us, and I speak fluent Spanish, and my husband was with me, and this was the first time he had been there. And this woman needed money for school supplies for her children. And we went up to her home and we saw where she lived, and we ended up, giving her the money for the school supplies, because if you saw where she lived, you would have just cried. I mean, we would have beyond cried. It was horrible. And so she needed to sell that scarf because that would put one egg into the rice for the entire family for that night. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking. I can understand why you do what you do, and I'm assuming a pretty large part of it goes to philanthropy.
Oh, it's why I went back to work. I mean, I don't need to work. And my husband and I, we have lots of joint philanthropic endeavors, but I have a bunch of things that I wanted to do. And so I said, if I go back to work, then I get to spend the money where I want. And that was the agreement. So yeah, I mean, I am working, not out of necessity at this point in time in my life. I am working because I want to be able to give it away.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. All right, I've got this concept here. It's called 6 figures is the new minimum wage. Talk a little bit about that.
One day I was having a conversation just like with, someone like you, and out of my mouth came this word with such passion. I mean, I'm passionate, but boy, this one was just like a volcano erupted. I don't know, but it was just like, I said, and 6 figures is the new minimum wage. And the whole room stopped, and I kind of stopped and went, holy moly, where did that come from, right? And everybody just looked at me, and we continued the conversation. But over the next couple of weeks, I mean, I couldn't forget this sentence, right? And I kept on testing it out with women. I said, well, 6 figures is the new minimum wage. And they go, oh, I like that. And then one woman said to me, can I use that? And I said, no, I'm trademarking it.
Good for you.
That's what I went and did. I'm trained, and the applications are in, and everything is in the works for trademarking it in both Canada and the U.S. And it was like it was given to me, right? And I felt like I had to run with it. And to me, when I was an entrepreneur 20 years ago coaching women, I would say to women, how much do you want to earn? And they'd say, well, $5,000 a month. And it's okay, because 20 years ago, that was a pretty decent income. But in 2020, $5,000 in North America is not a decent income. If you want to go live in Panama or El Salvador or Guatemala, you can do well on $5,000 a month. But you can't here. I mean, you really can't. So why that mentality is still there, I have no idea. But my goal is to eradicate it, where we just see 6 figures, $100,000 plus is the new minimum wage. And we have to stop thinking that $5,000 a month is going to cut it, because it's not.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree with you more. So do you do it through personal coaching? Tell me a little bit about how you change the mindsets.
I do work on money, but I also do work on coaching. I have times when people spend time with me on a one-on-one, and I also have group stuff that I do. And obviously I am trying to get it out through doing things like, podcasts and presentations and things like that webinar that I put together, which now that I've done it, I'm going to absolutely offer it to other people, because I think we need to get this message out. Mm-hmm. And when women see a presentation about earning money, that means then that they can do the kind of things that I get to do, like support this family in El Salvador and help them. And when we were living there, a huge storm came in, a 3-day storm, and it wiped out the village. Well, we fed 14 families for a week until the Red Cross stepped in. Now, it wasn't a huge amount of money. It was like $400 US to feed 14 families for a week. But for a lot of people, that would be out of their budget. Mm-hmm. So when they could see what I was doing and what my husband and I were able to do, it was really motivating and inspiring to them to think, well, that's what I want to do. And I often think that women will do for others what they won't necessarily do for themselves.
I would agree with that. That's why I like to go to it's your responsibility to help people, because I know that resonates with women, even though it's it's a tactic.
Tough love. It's tough love.
It's a tactic, but it does. I mean, it absolutely does work. What advice would you give to somebody who was thinking about becoming an entrepreneur?
It's funny. I'm just putting together a presentation called "Do You Have What It Takes to Be an Entrepreneur?" Because I can see that right now, so many women in corporate are, perhaps thinking, "Wow, that was kind of okay to be." I think you called it furloughed in the United States. We call it being laid off, or they had the opportunity to work from home. And so all of a sudden, they weren't doing that 9 to 5. They weren't sitting in traffic in a big city for an hour and a half to get to work. They weren't having to get all dressed up. They were able to just do what they did from home. And I think maybe for a lot of them, they're going to think, well, gee, I'd like to kind of do that every day, right? And they're gifted, they're talented, they've got a real skill. So now they have to market it. But do you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur? There's a big difference between going to work and being kind of told what to do and having the same routine, and you specialize in marketing, or you do the copywriting, or you do this, or you do that. All of a sudden, when you're an entrepreneur, it's like, well, which hat am I wearing? Not just this day, but maybe that about 10 minutes, right? You go from being a bookkeeper to then being a marketer, then to being a salesperson. Oh, I got to write the copy. Oh my goodness, I got to do this. I got to do that. You have to be so diversified in what you can do, especially in the beginning, because most people don't know how to delegate, and they don't have the funds to delegate, or they don't know what to delegate. So that's a huge thing. It's a tough job being an entrepreneur. I think it's the most challenging thing you could possibly do.
I say probably every single one of these podcasts, I will say being an entrepreneur is hard. And if you don't think it is, you haven't tried it, because, I always say, I haven't really, and this will kind of lead me to my next question for you. But in all the people that I've worked with, and all the people that I know that are entrepreneurs, and some are super successful and some are still working towards being that successful, I don't know anybody who said, oh yeah, I got this idea and I decided to start a company and I became a millionaire. Like, nobody, that's no one's journey. So we talk a lot on this podcast about the challenges that you face and how you kind of navigate those challenges, and how you come out on the other side, which is certainly pertinent to where we are right now. So what would you say as far as the challenges that you've encountered and overcome, and how they've helped you to be the successful entrepreneur you are today?
I think over 40 years, one of the things that I am is extremely disciplined. And that comes from my upbringing. I mean, I was raised in a religion that was very disciplined and very structured. And so, I spent 38 years in that religion, and it was amazing training. So for a lot of entrepreneurs, I think they think, oh, well, I can just get up when I want, and I can kind of sit at my desk in my bathrobe, and, I'll make a few phone calls, and then I'll go do some gardening, or maybe I'll go cook, do some baking. You're never going to cut it. You have to treat it like a job. So I'm never at my desk in my bathrobe. I get up and I get dressed and I go to work. I have a schedule. I happen to get up now super early. I'm up at 5 because I really like those early morning times. I just find that I really operate at a very high level of efficiency at that time. And at 4 o'clock, I'm done. But I'm at my desk sometimes for 10 hours, in a day. That's a long time for someone who's just doing this to raise money, to earn money to give away. You got to be pretty disciplined to do that. And I think you have to also be really open to ask for help. And I think that's another thing that I've noticed in just talking to women in corporate, is that in corporate, you're not kind of encouraged to ask for help because it looks like a sign of weakness. Like, maybe people think you don't know what you're doing, and I don't know what really goes on. But that's kind of the feeling I get in many, many jobs. And so now all of a sudden you're an entrepreneur, and you can think, well, I should just know this stuff. I took a course, or I read a book, and I should be able to just do this. I mean, that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, I've been doing this 40 years. I'm in a year-long mentorship, high-end mentorship program. I have my own coach. I'm in several groups where I am taking still training. I am constantly upgrading, and I've been doing this for 4 decades, Janet. I mean, how can you think you're just going to plop yourself down at a desk and think it's all going to just happen? It's not. And so you have to be prepared to ask for help, get training, hire a coach, and just humble yourself and realize you don't know it all. You don't matter, but you'll be shocked at how little you do know at the end of the day.
Well, I think it's a super important point, and I still struggle with it myself, and that is the asking for help. But I also know that I would not be an entrepreneur today if I didn't join an organization, a community of entrepreneurs, and learn from them and be supported from them or by them. I would have never made it without that infrastructure or those people who helped me on the days that I just didn't know what I was doing, or I was getting into trouble, or I was just having a hard day. And I have it today. I mean, I am a business coach. I've been a business coach for 15 years, and I still have a business coach.
Absolutely.
And we all have to have those.
And I don't actually, I work with I hang out with a lot of my time with 7-figure business owners. And honestly, they all have a coach. So I just don't think, and I'm sure that their coaches have coaches. I don't know where that hierarchy ends.
Yeah, I don't know where that ends.
All I get is that everybody needs help. So you have to lose that mentality of, oh, I know it all, or I have my degree, or whatever. You think you have to just be humble and say, I need help. I don't know this. And then be prepared to work really hard to learn and to apply it. Because it doesn't always going to be easy, and it may not come naturally.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said, because it's my current pet peeve. And that is all these. So we've been sheltered in place here since the middle of March. So 3 months, and I've been working really hard, like you. I'm disciplined. I don't work on Fridays, though. I take every Friday off and play golf with my sister. But every other day I'm here. I've got my schedule and all of that. And my sister, who I love, is retired. She had a job her whole life, but she's not alone in that she's got all of her closets cleaned. Like, 'cause that's what people have done for the last 3 months. They've cleaned their closets. My sister said to me, I was working on something, and it could have been editing a podcast. Or I don't know what it was, but I was doing. And she says, well, you don't really have a job, so you can just do whatever you want whenever you want it. And I said to her, because I understand that the disconnect, and I said to her, it's just curious when you're an entrepreneur. If you don't work or your team doesn't work, no money comes in. And she, that check isn't going to come from the corporation every month, whether I work or not. You have to make it happen. And I think that a lot of people either don't think that it's that hard, right? So they think they can just go and get up whenever they want to get up, and we're just sitting around on our couches eating bonbons and the money's just coming in. I don't think they realize just the dedication it takes to be an entrepreneur.
It's huge.
But it also gives you the freedom to do what you want to do. You have the freedom to support people who you've seen, and you know the value of what you're bringing to those people. You are making the difference, perhaps for them, of eating and not eating, or maybe as far as life and death. And you got to feel just so proud and thankful that you have been given the skills and the ability to do that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we will most likely break that cycle of poverty in that family, because now the children have all get protein, not 2 to 3 times a year. They get protein 3-4 times a week. A big difference. The oldest, Janet, who would be considered legally blind in this country, just graduated. The first time anyone in her family has graduated. And now we're looking at, it happened just before COVID, so right now we're looking at how can we support her to pursue post-secondary education. Unheard of, right? The boys are just doing so well. They're graduating, top of their class every single year. Because we also make sure that in January, when their school starts, that they have all the school supplies they need, which most parents just can't afford to do. So it's things like that, and it costs us probably about $2,000 a year to do that. Yeah. And just imagine, this is nothing really when you think about it. but yet we are able to do that. And that makes me feel so good because I know the difference that we make in that family's lives. And the fact that now the animals get fed, the animals get taken care of. When we arrived at that home back in 2015, and it was an Airbnb type of thing, and we arrived at the home, the animals were being fed a tortilla a day. Let me tell you, seeing that, we had bought groceries on the way from the airport, and we shared our food with those animals for the week, and then we fed those animals, for the entire time we were there. And the deal was, we'll feed your kids, but you must feed the animals.
Yeah.
And so that's why the animals have been taken care of, because I couldn't bear to see the stuff. I mean, I couldn't, and we were going to be there for 4 months. I had to have these animals fed, right?
Absolutely. Being a big animal lover, I can certainly understand that.
So it's those kinds of things that make you realize the freedom that you have. I mean, I'm totally unemployable, and I know that. So there's no way someone's going to tell me, kind of what to do or when to do it and when I can have a holiday and when I can, that doesn't work for me. So I think that the freedom for me is worth the price. I'd work hard for someone else, but at least now I can set the glass ceiling. I have no glass ceiling. It's just like, how much do I want to earn? Because the sky's the limit, right? When you're an entrepreneur, whereas the sky isn't the limit. Forbes magazine just had an article come out that says there would be 100 years before the wage gap between men and women is closed. So 100 years tells me that they don't really have a clue, just that it's going to be a heck of a long time.
AKA never.
Never, right? So we're talking about a woman never, ever, ever earning as much as a man in corporate. Like, oh my goodness, I would be running so fast, you wouldn't catch me. Because that to me is such a disparity that is unfair. And I would want to be able to earn my own money. Yeah,
to fight to overcome it. So I'll go back and ask my question again because I don't know that I think we got on a tangent, which is I'm sure was me. Challenges that you've had, a specific one, or challenges that you've faced and overcome. Because I know a little bit about your upbringing as a Jehovah's Witness. I know about that. I know that there were times when you weren't making as much money as you're making now. Talk a little bit about.
It was really tough. I left in 1999 with my first husband, and then 9 months later, and of course, when you leave, you lose all your family and your friends. And then 9 months later, my husband of 18 years said, "I don't want to be married to you anymore," which was kind of like, wow, that was a world shaker kind of thing. But I thought, okay, I can maybe handle this. And then 3 months later, my biggest client, Ford Canada, pulled my best-selling product out of their mobility program. And overnight, literally with no warning, and overnight, I lost a six-figure business in the automotive industry. And I mean, it did. It was really, really tough, Janet, because, the brainwashing in an organization like that is huge. And so, I had done so much personal development work. I had, walked on fire, jumped off a cliff, bent still rebars with my throat. I mean, it wasn't like I was sitting around, hoping this was all going to go away. I had worked at it. But honestly, at one point in time, I found myself homeless and almost bankrupt. And then I ended up living in a cabin with no heater insulation and had rats running up and down my walls. And that was really a low point, I have to say. The morning my toilet water was frozen and my fridge door was frozen shut. And I didn't know what to do. And yet, 18 months later, I was living in a beautiful condo and had a six-figure income again. So I think the challenge was just really not giving up on myself, because it would have been so hard because I just worked so hard to get through that brainwashing. Yeah. And it took some time. Yeah. It did.
Well, and to me, that is the perfect story, testimonial to the entrepreneurial mindset. Because I've had businesses and I've lost businesses, and I haven't been bankrupt or homeless, but I've certainly struggled at times. And what happens? You figure it out, you try a number of different things, and you just work till it works. And to me, that is the epitome of what makes an entrepreneur an entrepreneur. We don't stop. We pivot. We change. We try different things. We open up our minds. We talk to other entrepreneurs. We ask for help, right? We talk to other entrepreneurs. I mean, we do those things. And to me, those are the things that make Entrepreneurs. We persevere. We don't stop. So let me ask you one last question. And I think you've talked about it a lot, but I want to hear you say it because it may not be that. But what do you want your legacy to be? I mean, you've talked a lot about changing the world, and you're doing that. But what do you want your legacy to be?
I don't call it necessarily a legacy because I don't have children, so I'm not going to leave behind a legacy, but I do think about it as a ripple effect. And my goal is that women just look at money differently, and that I would be thrilled if at the end of my days here, I have empowered 1 million women in developed countries to have that, to be millionaires so that they can go out and do the work that they need to do. And that, I believe, could have a ripple effect that could go on, as long as we need it, which, who knows how long. But, to me, it's not just six figures. Six figures is a good place to start. But, my goal is to build $1 million empire because I really want that much money to be able to do the good. And I think if women could see that it's totally possible, then they would not just be thinking of their $5,000 a month. They'd be thinking, okay, how do I really create something that is going to have a massive impact in the world? And I believe women are going to change the world. I think we need to.
Yeah.
So I just think, and you need money to do it. And there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That to me is non-negotiable. Yes, you can give your time. Yes, you can give your amazing talents and gifts. But when you put money on it, it's like putting fuel on the fire. It just takes off.
Yeah.
And that's what we need right now. We need something fast, furious, and that's going to just go.
Yeah, there are things that money can do that nothing else can do but money.
That's right.
So if someone wants to learn more, I know you have a special offer that you've got for our listeners. How do they learn more, and what's the next step if they wanted to work with you or learn more about it?
Oh, well, thank you, Janet. I really love when women, and men too, and that's fine. But with women particularly, if they go to an assessment that I have that just is fascinating because it's about your money archetypes, your sacred money archetypes. And I do a lot of readings with women as to their top 3 archetypes and how that really impacts how they see money. And so if you go to the number 8, and then moneyarchetypes.com. So the number 8, moneyarchetypes.com, there's an assessment there. It'll take you under 10 minutes. And then you can book a reading with me. I'd love to, then go over it with you. It just gives you insight because this is the blueprint of your soul. So this isn't like, well, I don't like my hair color or I need a new dress or, my couch needs recovering. This is you. And how you do money is super important, especially right now. So, I'm working with a lot of women who have a very strong sacred archetype of nurturer. Well, nurturers are wonderful people. We need nurturers, but what we really need now is wealthy nurturers.
Yeah.
So then how do you become a wealthy nurturer when a lot of your top archetypes may be very much focused on giving or spending, right? So you're either giving it away or you're spending it, and the focus is not on saving or on building something that's going to generate income. And that's the kind of thing, it's a great place to start because then I kind of know what to do, where to suggest you work, what you work on, and where to go as far as developing that money mindset and also developing your business.
Awesome. I will put a link to that 8
moneyarchetypes.com.
So I'll put that in the show notes so there'll be a link there so people can get there.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time this afternoon. It's been great. I said I don't know you that well, and it's been great to get to know you better. This has been super fun. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Janet, for having me. It was wonderful to be here.
All right. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you for listening to The Breakaway Entrepreneur with Janet Fish. If you like our show and want more, check us out at www.breakawayentrepreneur.com. Our episodes are also available on YouTube, so if you want the full video interview experience, check us out there. As always, if you have questions, please email me at coach@breakawaybusinesscoaching.com. I'll answer your questions in an upcoming podcast. Join us next week for another exciting episode of The Breakaway Entrepreneur. Make it a great day.